What came first for you? Was it art or music? When you say you stopped practicing piano when you were 14, so you must have been quite proficient as a youngster in music.
Well,
What
I mean, I just had piano lessons once a week,
mm,
for about 4 years. I got to grade 4, I think, in the piano exams, which is not very high,
yeah.
but it was enough. But art was always there too. I mean, I got into photography when I was about 10.
Mm.
So they've always been the two things have always gone together.
Can you remember what got you into photography at 10? 'Cause that's pretty young to get into it, isn't it?
Well, my grandfather worked for Ilford,
Okay.
so he had some good cameras.
Yeah.
And I think he gave me my first camera, which was a Kodak Brownie,
Yeah.
ghastly little box, with a viewfinder you can't see anything, but it
Yeah.
was magic to me. But I love cinema, I love dance, poetry, books. I love it all. I was lucky my parents are quite cosmopolitan. They turned me on to good things, when I was quite young. So I'm grateful for that. Um, but music actually was definitely my own thing. There was really nobody musical in my family at all. We did have a piano at home,
Mm.
which obviously helped. But I'm the only one really in my family, except for my cousin, who's a really good drummer. And he sort of got into it when I did. I mean, he's younger than me, and he saw me doing well. And he thought, oh, I wouldn't mind having a go at that. And he did very well. And he was in a band called Prefab Sprout.
Was he the drummer in Prefab Sprout?
Yeah, yeah, Neil Conti.
Wow. I never knew you were related.
Yeah, we're cousins. Yeah. So, and
Okay.
he's done very well. I mean, he's done a lot since then. He played with Bowie and Jagger and all kinds of people. So I'm quite proud of him.
Yeah.
So it's
Very,
just
very
me
proud.
and him in the family.
Can you remember the music that you first loved as a kind of a kid? What kind of stuff would have been grabbing you at the time? Do you remember?
Well, at the very beginning, I only had my parents' records to play,
Yeah.
and they quite liked chanson, French chanson.
Okay.
And I remember I have a 78 RPM record with a wind-up player
Mm.
when I was very small, I think. And I guess when I was a little bit older, they actually got a proper record player, and they had plenty of classical music and Sinatra. I got into Sinatra. I liked him. I got into musicals like My Fair Lady and West Side Story. Um, but that was from my parents. The first time I remember getting into something for me was when I was watching the first rock and roll TV show in England, which is called 6-5 Special. And I think it started in 1957, which means I was 7 years old.
Yes.
And we didn't have a TV, but we had a friend who had a TV. And I remember going to his house every Friday night just to watch 6-5 Special.
Uh,
When I look at it now, it's pitiful, the quality of music on that show, except for the occasional American guest star. Most of it was English,
mm,
very pale versions of rock and roll
yeah.
by people like Jim Dale, who were like awful.
Mm.
I think there was a bit of Lonnie Donegan, but he was all right. And Joe Brown, he was all right, I suppose. But when you saw a real American, I think they might have had Eddie Cochran or somebody like that.
Mm.
Then I really came alive. I thought, this is something new. This is for me. And this is something my parents don't understand. So that's when I got excited about music.
When you were 18, right? With again quite young. Was it? I think you was it quite kind of fortuitous the way that you ended up becoming the keyboard player in the Love Affair?
Well, the thing was, I joined the Love Affair when I was 16, before they were called Love Affair.
Okay.
They were called the Soul Survivors. And we made one record, and then somebody in America, I think, heard about it because there's a band over there called the Soul Survivors who are already quite successful. And so I think they sent a letter or something happened anyway, but we were told to change our name.
Mm.
So we changed our name to Love Affair, which was the title of a romantic television drama at the time.
Mm.
And our second record was a huge hit. But what happened with me was I was still at school when I was in the band. And once we'd made one record, I said to my mum, listen, I want to leave school and be a professional musician. I was 17 at this time.
Mm.
Now, both my parents were teachers, so they're quite academic. So she said, I mean, I understand. She said, you've got to finish your schooling, get your A levels.
Yeah.
Then you've always got something to fall back on, the classic phrase.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never fallen back actually since then. And but I kind of hummed and hawed and said, oh, all right. And it meant that I would be out of the band for maybe 9 months to finish my 6th year of school. And after that, well, maybe I can do what I want. So I kind of reluctantly did that. And they got somebody else in. And during that 9 months, they had a #1 hit, which was Everlasting Love. Now, I wasn't sure if I was going to get back in the band. We hadn't really agreed anything. But once I left school, I just let them know, you know, I'm out of school now. And they said, well, actually, we'd love you to come back because we don't really get on that well with the guy who replaced you. So that was like a miracle.
Yeah.
Because it could have so easily happened that they just carried on with him and didn't have me back. But I was close friends with them in the beginning. So that worked in my favor. So suddenly from a 6th form schoolboy, I was a #1 pop band, you know, on television and everything overnight.
What did your mum say?
In the beginning, not much, but then once we started appearing on TV, I noticed she was telling her friends, oh, my son was on TV last night.
Yeah.
So then it was all right.
You're playing the Hammond organ, is that right? With
Mostly at that time, yeah.
Not particularly portable, is it?
What do you need? Roadies.
Yeah.
Well, I got a portable one.
Okay.
Just at that time, they came out with one that you could split in half.
Okay.
So the keyboard came off, and the amp and speaker and the bottom was a separate piece.
Yeah.
So it was actually fairly portable.
For those people who don't know the Hammond organ, it's a very distinctive kind of sound. And you know, when you're hearing one, do you still have access to one? I guess you probably do you?
Well, I don't have a full size one with the tubes, the valves.
Yeah.
But I have one that's not digital. It's pre-digital, but it's a smaller flat keyboard. It's actually transistorized Hammond. So that's a pretty good version of what I used to have.
The interesting thing with the love affair as well was the fact that there was some pretty significant. I heard you talking about this today, but about some pretty significant session players actually playing on the tracks, which I didn't know at all until I found this out the other day. But they were quite big names, weren't they? Actually.
Well, Clem Catini was the drummer, his classic drummer.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bit like the English equivalent of what they call the Wrecking Crew.
Yeah, yeah.
Who were in Los Angeles, who played on everything. And it was that kind of team that we had. You know, in the band, we were from 18 to 16. We were very young, very green. And the suggestion was that they just make the record with the Wrecking Crew of England, and it just gets the job done quicker and better. We just, okay, whatever. We didn't mind. And a lot of people were doing that here too.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure must have been pretty standard at the time. I didn't know, you know, I didn't know that was going on.
It was going on all the time. And I mean, Jimmy Page played on nearly everything. Not our record, but he played on the Kinks, the Who, I don't know what else.
Wow.
You know, even bands like that who are actually solid independent rock bands who had a style, even then they got session guys in for certain things. And it was very acceptable, you know, but we admitted it. That was our downfall. Nobody else talked about it, but we did. Oops.
Yeah, and then of course it got into the press, and people thought, well, they're not playing their own instruments, sort of thing. Obviously, you were live, but
yeah,
there was that, I suppose.
But still, you know, we had a number one and we had 5 top 10 hits
Not bad.
after that, so it wasn't bad.
And record sales those days, obviously compared to now. I mean, when you had the number one, how many records would you have sold to get to number one, do you think?
I don't know, but apparently we sold more than the Beatles that year.
Wow.
Or that month. Because, I mean, after Love Affair, I formed a progressive rock band.
Okay.
And I was the leader of the band, and I was arranging and composing.
This is Morgan?
Yeah.
Naming the band Morgan? Was that a, you know, I did that.
I couldn't think of anything else. Sheer laziness. I told you I'm lazy.
Well, it kind of works, doesn't it?
I mean, you know, I'll tell you how lazy I am. You know, my name's Steve, like you.
Really? Okay.
Ah, you didn't look that up, did you?
No, I didn't.
You didn't read Wikipedia. My full name is Stephen Morgan Fisher.
Okay.
And when I rejoined Love Affair, because they were famous, our manager took me aside one day and said, listen, we can't have 2 Stevens in the band, because the singer was called Steve Ellis. If we have 2 Stevens in the band, it'll confuse the fans, which is ridiculous when you think about it. What's wrong with having 2 Stevens in the same band? But I'm absolutely grateful for him for demanding that, for telling me you've got to change your name. And I thought for about a week of all these ridiculous, stupid names. And then it occurred to me, well, my middle name will do, won't it? So I used my middle name, Morgan. And now I'm so glad I did, because I think it's a good sounding name. Yeah. It rhymes with organ. And Stephen Fisher sounds like an accountant.
Yeah, it's a better name.
There you go.
In the band Morgan, though, the first time you came across some quite shy guy called Freddie.
Yeah, because the singer we got in Morgan had just left a band called Smile, which had Roger and Brian in it, who became Queen. And so one day I went to the singer's house and he said, oh, here's the guy taking over from me in Smile. And that was Freddie. And he was shy, he didn't say a word. Just he looked exotic, gave me a limp handshake. And so that would be 1971, I suppose. So Smile hadn't changed the name to Queen yet. But that's how far back we go.
Did you see the film, Bohemian Rhapsody?
Oh, yeah, sure.
What was your take on that, by the way, having known them so well?
Well, I mean, lots of people have said this, that so many facts were distorted or omitted.
Yeah.
And I've actually saw it twice just to sort of try and get a grip of what they were trying to do. And I think at one point what happened really was, because it took a long time, there were problems with the scriptwriter, the producer, the guy who's going to play Freddie. It went through a lot of convolutions. And I can well imagine Roger and Brian, who were basically in charge of the project, sitting down somewhere in a studio in Hollywood and saying, okay, you're the experts, you take over the story and you do what you think's best. Because, you know, what do we know about making, you know, blockbuster movies, right?
Yeah.
And I think Hollywood, whoever was in charge of the script, just took the story and molded it into a good dramatic 2-hour story. I mean, it's like any other biopic, cramming a whole life into 2 hours. You've got to cut corners in enormous quantities to get the thing to flow and to finish, within the time frame.
Yeah.
So I kind of accepted it. It's like, well, that's how it is. And, of course, it's different because a lot of the fans know the true story. And it's not like the Ray Charles movie, because the Ray Charles movie or the Johnny Cash movie is much older news. But the Queen story, most of the fans are still around, are still quite young and still know the story and they know all the facts.
Yeah.
But it didn't stop the movie from being massively successful. I think it's up to $1 billion now.
Yeah, I mean,
so,
it's piece of entertainment, isn't it, at the end of the day?
It's the Hollywood version of Queen, so no big deal. There were certain things I liked in it. The guy who played Brian was amazing. He was so true to life. I couldn't quite get used to Freddie's teeth. It's just not quite right.
Quite tough to pull off, I suppose.